Saturday morning programs where we invited people who participated in the contest to talk a little bit about the background as far as why they joined, the preparation to shoot one roll, which is at 24 frames per second, is 2 minutes and 45 seconds roughly. The preparation, the cameras, because as more people are starting to step into shooting with 16, obviously you need a camera, and where they obtained a camera, the crew, script, obviously with 2 minutes and 45 seconds. How did you manage the script? And then once it's been filmed, or even actually during the film, is since it's 2 minutes and 45 seconds, basically you got 1 or 2 takes. How much was rehearsal? How much time did you spend on rehearsal? And then after filming, we scanned the post flow as far as editing it and doing final color, and what editing device you use, and then what kind of color did you use. So with that, we're fortunate to have 3 participants, and we're going to be doing this a couple of times over the next couple of months, because this year we had over 30 teams. So given a time frame of only an hour and a half, I figured let's just try to have 3 teams talk a little bit about their experiences, and certainly anyone who's online who participate, you're more than welcome to join as well. So we are fortunate to have Brian Hollers with us, who was one of the teams, and as well as Nicholson Feldman, and then Brian and Kevin Lonano. So thank you for agreeing to get out here early in the morning, or getting up and getting a cup of coffee and joining us. So with that, what I'd like to do is just, if I could ask Brian Hollers first, what attracted you to join the contest? And after that, then I'll just go right down the line and ask the same thing. What attracted you to say, okay, I'm going to participate?
Sure. So you guys can hear me, right? You can hear me? Great.
Yes.
Making sure that sound works. Yeah, so what kind of started to attract me with this? I met Michael fairly recently when I moved to Atlanta, and I've always been interested in film and shooting film and Kodak in general. I shoot a lot of film photography. I shot some 8mm stuff years ago. Yeah, and I kind of just saw this opportunity, and I knew that if I didn't sign up, I probably still would not be shooting 16 anytime soon. But I just knew if I signed up and I just put the money in, it would force me to do it, you know? And I've always wanted to. I love cinematography in general, and I just want to make sure I have that background of film instead of just the digital side. You know, I love the idea of film. So I wanted to go through that process, and I knew it'd be a learning experience, but would force me to do that. So I signed up, and here we are, and I shot a film and happy with it. So yeah, grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. And then Kevin and Brian?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Kevin, why don't you go first?
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Lonano. Yeah, basically, I think there's another, as Mike Brown mentioned, there's a similar kind of like exercises like this, like the straight 8 thing with the Super 8. And I think I had asked Brian a couple of years ago about if he was interested in doing that, but we just never kind of like, we didn't have the timing for it. But I think this one was coming around again, and I think I just kind of like just emailed him real quick. He's like, do you just want to do this? Just something to just as like an exercise and just to work with film. And he wholeheartedly said yes immediately, and we just kind of went to work. And I met Michael at the Atlanta Film Festival, I think, breakfast on the
Right. You met the whole team.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I asked was, why don't you process Super 8? And I think you all laughed at me, and then we just started talking. Like we just developed a rapport right away. and they were they're a great crew over there, and they were super helpful, and happy to be a part of this as well.
Yeah, I think doing something like this is an absolute motivator to like develop an idea and get something shot on film, so you have a completed film. Otherwise, you're kind of just like, you know, spinning your wheels on like an idea, and there's no deadline to execute it. So competitions and contests like this are really a motivator to like, I have to shoot and I have to make a film and have a completed film. So it was definitely that kind of a motivator, because I think we hit a little bit of a creative lull at that time. So this was a good motivator to make something.
Thank you, Brian. And Nicholson?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So with me, I guess it really goes back to I just enjoy shooting on film. I learned about it through Robbie Land, who is a professor at Georgia State. He teaches a lot of experimental film and 16 millimeter production. And so he told me about the film festival that's coming up, and I'd only been shooting film for a month at the time, but I was like, why not? I dragged about 4 or 5 of my friends to pitch in the money to join into the festival, and then we gave it a try, and I really liked how my film turned out. I think it turned out great. So yeah.
Good. Well, thank you, and good confidence too. And now let me ask, going back to Brian, I'll kind of say, okay, you joined, you picked up the one roll, and for those who are just joining us, one roll is 2 minutes and 45 seconds. How did you obtain the camera? How did you approach the story, given the timeline? How did you approach the rehearsal? And how did it go into the production? So just from there.
Yeah. So I attained the camera. I got an Aton XTR Super 16 from, I feel like everyone knows this guy, Christian Zuniga. Great DP in town, owns the camera. So got in touch with him, got access to that. And then I have another great friend who owns some nice glass. So we shot on some Ingenue zooms, 2 Ingenue zooms. Really, really fortunate to have these great friends in my life. And then after that, man, let's see. Rehearsals going into that. So I filmed at Arabia Mountain. It's a place, beautiful place. If you haven't been, man, I love that area. And I always thought that looked so good on film. And I didn't want to go crazy on lighting or honestly rehearsals. I wanted to make it as simple as possible, since we only have 2 minutes and 45 seconds to work with, and we're shooting on film. So I tried to simplify that as much as I could in the technical world. So I found shots that I think were just beautiful, that really, captured the story, really like told the story. And I actually shot a lot of takes. I think it was like a total of it was like a lot of shots. I literally only did like 1 take per shot. And I think it was like 10 shots maybe. And I literally wrote it out, like storyboarded the heck out of this thing, estimated how many seconds I needed to shoot each shot, what shots were in order to the location we wanted to shoot at Arabia Mountain with the sun, using the Sunseeker app. It was really complicated, but very, very beneficial, I think, just to think of that process and the organization. So yeah, once I did the math of like each shot, how long it took, then it kind of gave me like, how much do I have left to play, So when it came to rehearsals, a lot of like my talent didn't have to do too many crazy things, but a lot of walking on Arabia Mountain, a few like kind of crying things. But we would rehearse everything, even the walking. But there was one scene that was so hard, one shot. It was a mirror that was broken into 3 parts, and I needed to shoot over the shoulder of the talent to then see his reflection in the mirror, but I needed to show only half of his face in one broken part of the mirror, and then the other third of his face in the other broken part, and then the other third in the other. But he puts the mirror pieces down, so it reveals each part of his face. So, oh my gosh, that was terrifying. So we did like, focus is a possible issue. The placement of the mirror is a possible issue. The angle of the camera to the mirror is a possible issue. So we just rehearsed it probably only 4 times, honestly, and just made sure he hit his marks every time with the mirror and everything. And we honestly just rolled it first take and first take of the entire thing, because I knew that I needed to do this first. It was priority to the story. I needed to do it first, and if we screwed it up, I'd have to do it one more time, and we only had 2 takes, or I wouldn't be able to complete my story. So shot it in 1 take. I was content. I felt I got what I wanted, moved on, and it ended up working great. So that was just so scary, but it was awesome. So there's that. Rehearsals, we always rehearsed. I co-directed with a guy named Daniel Faber. So I was the DP, but also he co-directed. He kind of dealt with the talent while I kind of dealt with the shots, and also kind of had input with blocking. But yeah, I think that kind of answers your questions on the rehearsals. I think that was.
Wanted to ask you about one is could you mention not to get technical, the Aton XDR prod? I think we spooled that down, right? We had to spool it down because it doesn't take 100 footers, so we had to take that and spool it to a core so you could put it on that camera.
Exactly. Yes,
we had a few people do that too.
Yep. I knew a few ACs in town that could unspool it and put it on, but they said it takes an hour or 2, and it's really, really kind of challenging. So I just figured I'd go to you guys, Kodak, and just do it. So
yes, I think Robert and John.
Right? Yeah. I have the 300 feet. The leftovers still in my fridge right now. So if any more projects come out there, let's shoot it 300 feet.
The other question, because part of the and I hear this, but not to reiterate, but you mentioned rehearsal. Now, given that the time frame, is that if you were shooting electronically, would you rehearse as much, or you would tend to, all right, we'll just kind of figure it out on the set? Or since it was filmed, since it was limited time, you did more rehearsal?
Absolutely did do a little bit more rehearsal, but this is the saying that you always hear, let's roll on rehearsal. I guarantee we just roll on rehearsal in digital, but on film, hell no, we're not going to roll on rehearsal. That's crazy. But so I'm sure we'd roll. I bet our takes would be 10 takes, I guarantee, on a digital camera. But on film, we did 1. And I guarantee my locations, and I would swap shots a lot. I don't think I think I'd shoot in a different order if it was digital. I would, it wouldn't have to be the priority shots. I wouldn't have to do the shots that make sure the story works. So if I did have to cut shots out, or the film roll went out and I didn't have enough time to shoot those shots, then that's what I had to sacrifice. But in digital, I would just shoot the way that makes more sense to the lighting and the location, how close it is,
right,
and just get it all out that way. So that definitely is a different thing to do.
Well, thank you, Brian. And then now the same thing for Kevin and Brian.
You want to go, Kev?
You can go first.
So we both love film. Kevin has shot more film than I have, but I've done it a couple of times, and it is a very sort of stressful experience because you only have so much footage. So in the past, when I have shot on film, I would rehearse and shoot with a digital camera so I get the cadence right. And just in case something happened with the film, I would always have a digital as a backup. But we didn't want to do that with this because we decided we wanted to do something more experimental. One thing I think is great about film that's better over digital is that you can actually double expose pictures. With film, you can't really do that digitally except in post, when you're putting 2 layers on a timeline. But we wanted to do some of that in camera. So that was one of the things we set out to do with the project that we were doing. And we originally talked about making some kind of a cinematic time capsule of things that we liked, but also at that time our dad passed away. It'll actually be a year next month when he passed away. So we decided to memorialize him by doing an experimental film that featured things that he owned and things that we like aesthetically, and sort of created this hodgepodge. What did I call it?
Fantasia, like a kind of like
Fantasia. Yeah, yeah. Not like the Disney films of sorts, but so yeah, we decided to go that route. So we did a lot of tabletop shooting with things that he owned, and also we double exposed like a diving bell that he owns, like a miniature diving bell, against some like light up skulls. So we shot it and then rewound it and then shot it again. And the camera that we used, Kevin owned a Bolex, so you're able to rewind and double expose the image, or triple expose the image. So we did that a couple of times, and we also created like mats where you could cover your lens except for like a pinhole, and you can shoot one thing here and then rewind the film, and you can like shoot another thing over here. So we did that a couple of times with the film. Anything you want to add, Kevin?
No, basically, I think you kind of got all the major bullet points. I think the road leading to this was kind of took us a while to sort of like hammer down an idea that we kind of were comfortable doing. I think an original idea we were going to do was we were going to take there's this really ridiculous essay written by Benjamin Franklin about farting, and we were going to like shoot like almost like a Barry Lyndon looking like costume drama with like narration of this ridiculous essay that he wrote about how you should fart proudly. That lasted, I think that conversation lasted like a day or two, and then we moved on to trying to figure out something else to do. But yeah, the Bolex was something that I'd been saving up for about like a year and a half. I used to have a Blackmagic Pocket, the old one, and I sold that like 3 or 4 years ago. And I wanted something that I could I wanted something honestly that I could shoot if the power went out, kind of thing. And the Bolex, it has no batteries. You just wind it and you get 30 seconds. It's an MOS camera, so I definitely have grown to appreciate more films that would post loop their audio and their dialogue. But I think I'm just rambling at this point.
I wonder, because Brian said something about Kevin had owned, so that was past tense. Have you sold your Bolex?
No, it's right. It's over here. Okay. And initially before the 100 Feet of Film project, we'd gone around the Metro Atlanta area looking for either movie theaters that were open or movie theaters that were closed to photograph them. Also, just like another project that we had of just kind of like preserving like the buildings themselves, because there's nothing in the world more depressing than looking at a movie theater that's closed down or completely vacant. It's like looking at a crypt. So I think doing that was in the back of our heads. I had shot a short film on 16 millimeter that's going to be at the Atlanta Film Festival. So I've gotten a taste for it, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So
And I'm just curious, because you were doing some of the exposing and then rewinding, double exposure, split exposure. Is that something that you had experience with, or that was your first time?
No, it was nerve-wracking. It was
Really?
honestly nerve-wracking, and it was I'm not very good at math, so it was just a lot of kind of like, I guess this, like, we'll do our best. We'll do our best to rewind to the counter. The camera itself does a pretty good job of having the counters of your frames and where you should end up. There's always a little bit of a margin of error, I think I experience. So probably more repetition would help that out,
Yeah, the finished film has 2 shots that are true double exposures that were done on film, and the rest we were doing. But the other thing about doing those kinds of double exposures is that there were some happy accidents that occurred that we actually just put into the film. And you know, we love the way a 100-foot roll starts out where the colors bleed and then your picture like magically appears like a Polaroid, and then it sort of flames out and dies at the end. So we like those things. Yeah, like a match. And so we liked those things, and we incorporated those things into the film as well. So we tried to show as much as possible like this was created through film as opposed to digitally.
Okay, thank you. Just have one more question. You mentioned about it was really first time doing the double exposure and the split screen. So how did you just read it or did some YouTube?
Well, we're both fans of we're both fans of this one particular animator. His name is Don Hertzfeld, and that was kind of like one of the first times as a young kid learning about doing double exposures. He did a film called Rejected, and he also did a feature film of some shorts called It's Such a Beautiful Day. He kind of works with stick figures animation, but he does a lot of sometimes I think 16 exposures on a single frame, and he does these almost existential celestial epics with stick figures, and really got me interested in doing double exposures at an earlier age. But also that's just how a lot of experimental filmmakers would just do it, and it's just a fascinating and really organic. It just nothing can really compare. I think you can do overlays in Premiere or Resolve, but I think actually getting it on the film surface, there's just something really magical about that.
Oh, cool. Just curious. But, okay, Nicholson, if you could
Yes.
talk a little bit about the production process.
Yes. So the camera that we wound up using was the Bolex H16. It was specifically the first model, the Rex 1. So the viewfinder was tiny and not bright at all. And I did pay way too much for it on eBay, but that's a separate story. We wound up, I don't have many lenses for it, so on Amazon you can find some C-mount lenses for security cameras. They work perfectly with the Bolex. Aside from that, the pre-production process has always been something that I'm not a fan of. I'm very easily bored by script writing or anything like that. I'm really more the kind of person that wants to just get out and shoot it. But I did have to, of course, be there for the pre-production process this time. I had my friend Ross, he was the director. I had him write it and direct it. It was his first time. He was a first-time filmmaker. Never before had written a film nor directed one, so I just kind of handed the entire thing off to him, and I was like, you come up with the idea, you write it, you direct it, I'll shoot it, because let's just do what we're best at. And I had to turn down a couple ideas from him in the beginning, but eventually he wrote the script that I was fond of, so we just went ahead and did that. On the actual shoot day, as everyone else has said, it's it's rehearsal, and then they'd be like, "Do you want to shoot?" And I'm like, "No, you can rehearse a couple more times. Just sit in the corner, just watch them rehearse a couple more times before you even pick up the camera, because it's only 100 feet, and I didn't want to do multiple takes of anything." But yeah. It was fun.
And you actually, where did you film? I don't recall where your location was, or did you go? And how did you go the actual day of the production?
We shot in an apartment complex downtown called Muses. in a friend of mine apartment. There's just like books everywhere, just papers he's written that's like crumbled up and thrown to the side. The true manic writer type. And it was I really wanted the contrast of like warm tungsten lighting that I was using for the 200T, and then the nice cool daylight coming in through the window. So we had a window open all day, and this was December, so it was a little chilly that morning. But through the production, the lights warmed us up, thankfully. And every time that I would shoot a take, I would like stop rolling, and I'll look at the sound person and be like, all right, let's do that again the exact same way, but let's do it for sound. Because that Bolex, I don't know if it's mine specifically, but it sounds like a dying toaster. So that's a personal problem. But yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nicholson. What I'll do, I wanted to ask all four of you just the post part of it, as far as when you, okay, after it's processed, scanned, your editing technique, and then color. And then what I'll do is open it up for questions that other people may have about individual productions. So, Brian Hollers, as far as editing and then color. And what type of editing software you use and color?
Yeah, Adobe Premiere Pro. We actually use the color within Adobe Premiere Pro, like the Lumetric. So my my co-director, Daniel Faber, he's a good editor as well. I love directors that also know how to edit. That's huge. I know how to edit. I just don't really care to do it anymore. But so we sat down together and we edited that whole thing, I think, in actually like one day. But yeah, the editing process, man. I mean, we kind of had it really scripted super well of how we were gonna do it in the edit, but we did change some things. I'm not gonna lie, we did change a few things. There were actually like 2 shots I wanted to get that we never got. So because of the light went down way too quick, so we didn't shoot it. But yeah, I mean, editing, it really wasn't too complicated. Trying to think if there was anything specific about that. But color process, man, I did that. I like the color process. I'm not really a colorist. I like to sit back and also have a professional do that, but I ended up doing it in this case. And then he was also kind of sitting there behind my shoulder, also kind of like suggesting, but it was great. That was fun. I like to go into, as a photographer as well, I like to go into Lightroom, and I like to sometimes do like a color style and like options of styles and like different looks, I guess, in Lightroom because it's quicker and more simplistic. And then I will take that look and like all the options, figure out what works best with the story, and then use that look into Lumetrics or some actual video coloring program. And what Kevin and Brian were saying earlier, I really liked. They said they really kind of let the that like film kind of like burning at the beginning and at the end kind of look, like kind of just live in the film. We kind of did a similar thing, like the grain and everything. We didn't try to like reduce anything or anything like that. We wanted to keep it grainy. We wanted to keep it looking raw, make it look really film. But obviously when you get the film back, it's very cloudy, very kind of log looking. So we definitely added a lot of contrast. I like things dark, so we definitely brought down the shadows and the blacks. And then to really bring out the sky at Arabia Mountain, because man, we lucked out. We had this crazy like pink magenta sunset going on at Arabia Mountain. So super happy to do that. We did shoot, actually, this was kind of interesting. We did shoot on a tungsten stock. I don't remember the ASA, but a tungsten stock at daylight, but I did use an 85 filter. Which is like a tungsten filter you put over the lens, because I kind of like that look. I did some research and I liked the way it looked, a little warmer tone instead of so blue. I wanted more of like a warm golden hour throughout the whole thing, but at daylight. So yeah.
How long did it take you to do color?
Oh man.
Edited about a day, and
Color, actually, like I'm gonna say 3.5 hours. Yeah. We didn't have too much time. We really wanted to get this thing done like in a day. And we had so many jobs kind of stacking up at that time. We had to keep pushing our edit day and our color day and our edit day. And then finally we're like, we have to do this before, we don't have time to turn this thing in. So yeah, I think we did it all in one day, the edit in one day and color in the same day. So long day.
Great. Brian, Kevin? Kevin.
Yeah,
Brian,
Well,
you did the post.
we both work in post-production, actually. So the post-process is always something we're always mindful of, and just kind of that's a little bit of our wheelhouse. I think it took us a day just to edit it. We edited it in DaVinci Resolve. I've been moved over to that basically because it's you can basically get it for free, and it has a lot in there, and it's a good software. It took us about a day to edit, and I think reorganizing some of the shots because Brian storyboarded, and basically he had basically like a storyboarded script for this that we kind of followed. I think there were a few things that we reorganized, and then color was basically done in an hour because we work with a guy named James Kuhn who's a colorist. So he basically just offered up an hour of his time one afternoon, and he kind of just got it done. I don't seem to recall him doing too much. I don't know if he just applied like a Rec 709 and then just kind of balanced things out. I think we wanted to just kind of maintain what the look of the film stock would be, just to kind of just maintain that and not do anything too crazy or drastic, like just basically just kind of keep it just like this is what would be exposed if you just developed it if you just processed it through a telecine back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to talk about sound, Brian, or music?
Yeah, but before sound, I also wanted to say that this project was a lot different because we did have storyboards, of like double exposures and things that we wanted to achieve like on film, but the film was really constructed and created in the editing room because I didn't know, like we did this shot, we had this shot in mind and this shot in mind, but we didn't know like how it was gonna all cut together. So my wife did a series of paintings of a heart in various stages of like beating because our dad died of cardiac arrest. So she drew these paintings, and then we filmed each painting for like a second, and then we took like a few frames out of each of those seconds and then animated it. So at the beginning, you'll see this heart like animating. So that was something that was, had to be created in post. We didn't do the stop motion function on the Bolex camera because I don't know if we had the piece, or I don't know if the Bolex was capable of doing that.
I don't have the
but it was exciting. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we made it work. I think we knew ahead of time that we didn't have that, so that's why we planned to like shoot this and then we'll extract frames to do the animation. So it was very, cathartic and exploratory to like create this movie in the editing room because there were like cuts or durations of frames that meant something to us, that won't register with like a person just watching it, like dates and times involving our dad's passing are like injected into the movie in sort of subliminal ways that we know about but nobody else knows about. And then the sound was done at Company 3 by my friend Eric Netherton, and the music, and also created the soundscape since we shot the film MLS and there was no thought about what the sound would look like. We had things that we wanted to incorporate, like we had an old voicemail from our father that we wanted to put at the end, and then we had sounds from when he was in the ICU that we put into the film as well. So and then Eric took all that and was able to add different other sounds, and put his artistic stamp on the film. Yeah, it was a very good experience working on the film.
Thank you. And Nicholson?
Yeah. So when it came to the editing and coloring, I did it pretty much by myself. I was approached by one editor who offered to do it for an unbelievable price, and I was just like, no, it's 2 minutes. But the I edited it in Premiere Pro, and I actually did the coloring, like Brian, in Premiere Pro as well. Um, I I started to color it in Final Cut, but I don't know. So I just wanted it all to be done in like the same program, and I'm just very comfortable with Premiere, so I just went with Premiere. Um, as everybody said, just like bring in some more contrast. I didn't really touch it too much. I just want to leave the film to speak for itself. So really, just a little bit of contrast, a little bit of a little bit of saturation. Warmed it up just a little bit, gave it some just a little bit of details here and there. But aside from that, I didn't touch it too much. I didn't let the colors fade in like Kevin and Brian said, but at the very end, I did like that it kind of like flickers away like a candle, like they said. So I did leave that as my exiting strategy, I guess. But I'd say it took me about a day to edit it for the rough cut, and then I realized that I needed a lot more sound that I didn't get. So I had to go and get a typewriter and set up an audio recorder and get some more sound and just kind of plug it in piece by piece. So overall, maybe 3 or 4 days for editing here and there. Coloring probably only took about probably a couple hours.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I know I had a few other questions, but I know there are other people who are on this call and joining us, and thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. So I wanted to offer up to those people who are on this call or on this chat the opportunity to ask our panelists any questions they had as far as production. Any questions you may want to either send to me or ask? You're here, Nikki. Okay. Well, question I had was when you got your team together, your crew, and you mentioned to them, we're doing this contest. It's 100 foot of 16. Just out of curiosity, because some may have worked with film, some may not have. What was the general reaction from? And I know Kevin and Brian, you did this between yourselves, but perhaps for Brian and Nicholson, what was the general reaction from your crew as far as prior to working with film and then after the experience? Just out of curiosity. Brian.
Yeah.
Nicholson, I'm sorry. Nicholson, go ahead.
Yeah, so the first reaction was why, which was a quick explanation of why not. Why not shoot on 16 just for the experience. They didn't take too much negotiation, but I did have to explain to people throughout the day that I couldn't just keep rolling and I couldn't just do another take. So that was a constant battle I had to pick.
Okay. Did they understand the reason why? I'm like, okay, it's like it's film, so it's or
they got used to it. Like they're just like, can't you just like, I don't know if they thought like I was like doing something with like VHS here or something. They're just like just wind it back and just shoot it again. I'm just like, no, that's not happening.
Okay. And Brian Hollers?
Yeah, I had a great response with my crew. They were so stoked, actually. They were because a lot of these people, a lot of my friends, they haven't really shot on film. They haven't had that experience. We're always around digital cameras these days. Um, so my focus puller, she was all about it. She's been around film, but she never had the opportunity to like go through the process of pulling focus with it. And my loader slash second AC, she's worked with film a lot, does a lot of indie projects. So we had confidence in her to just like load it and and kind of any other additional questions. But it was a learning process for everyone. So they were really happy to just take the opportunity to learn. Um, who else? I mean, my little like G&E crew at the time, which was just like one guy with a reflector, two different guys because we shot 2 different days, but they were just all about like, they're unfamiliar with this camera. So they're like, can we look like, what is it looking like? What are you guys doing? Like, so we're all learning from it. It's exciting. I mean, it's fun, I think, for some of these film kids out there because we don't get to use it that often. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. And actually, I asked Brian and Kevin because obviously it was you two, but you also had other people, I guess, in the post end of it and sound. So did that influence, did you come across people who were wondering, why are you doing this?
No, nobody.
No.
Nobody was like, ew, you're doing film. Like, no, people were excited. We had one person on set who helped us out, who had experience working with Super 8 film. So he was just nervous, I think, working with 16, because I don't think he had worked with it before. But no, our crew was really small. It was just us three that day, and then my wife did the paintings beforehand, and then Eric did the sound, and James did the color. And James did color correction on film for years, so it wasn't anything that he wasn't used to. So no, everybody was super receptive of the idea of shooting on film. I think people were more like nervous about the content, that they didn't want to mess it up because of what it was about. That, right, I think was the only nervousness that people had for the film, was that they didn't want to let us down. But nobody did. I feel like everybody came through and did a fantastic job, and I'm very proud of the end result.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And Kevin?
No, that's basically, I think he covered everything with that. Just one last thing, I think something that I think Nicholson had mentioned, just the discipline of shooting on film. It's nice. It's nice to basically think about what you're going to shoot and not, just keep banking a lot of footage. You can, like, I think it's good to just, before going to set, to kind of have an idea of what you're going to be shooting, what you're going to be doing, which is really, and because also that leaves you open to more happy accidents and more, spontaneity at times when you kind of have like a pre-plan going in. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that really quick. So sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. We do have a question from Ebony and Blanding, and the question is, what's the standout thing you all would do differently to enhance, maximize their filming experience? And also, if I can ask another one, is there such a thing as being too ambitious with a first-time experience? So I guess the first question, what's the standout thing that you would do differently to enhance, maximize your filming experience? And that's to any of y'all.
Well, I think on our project there was like a couple of takes where it was either overexposed or underexposed, because there was a few times where we had a pinhole mat on a picture and the exposure was too low, so the picture was really like not visible. So I suppose, like, just to really know what exposure level you want to shoot at is a lot of understanding the technical stuff completely before you roll on something, especially something that's is a bit more experimental. In I guess that'd be the one thing I can think of, you know. But even that being, Kevin, who was camera operating, like did a great job, considering he was doing things that he hadn't necessarily done before on film. So I don't know, Kevin, do you have anything to add or disagree with or anything?
No, I would say I think, yeah, basically I think some of the pinhole things that we talked about, where Brian talked about, was once again like the exposure and just I think just the size of actually the pinhole too, just like
Yeah.
just like little tiny things there, here and there. Also, just we were very mindful to, you know, ensuring the shutter was closed in between, like before moving your eye, just because we wanted to minimize a lot of light leaks, potential light leaks. So it was just a if anything, maximizing just the experience next time is just being even more buttoned up and prepared. But I think it was great. I would just love to just, you know, I just want to keep doing that. So.
Good idea.
I actually had, yeah, two things. First thing, if we want to get technical real quick, I shot on 35 millimeter lenses. Like, that was what it worked with that, I guess with that like sensor size, I guess you would say in the digital world. So they weren't 60 millimeter lenses. So if it said like 20 mil on the lens, it was actually more like a 40 mil, you know? So, or I'm sorry, yeah, like a 40 mil. So that was weird. So next time I'm definitely going to try to get something that's like meant for 60 millimeter camera, 60 millimeter glass with 60 millimeter camera. But it still works, still looks the same, just totally different, you know, markings and stuff. But then besides that, communication is huge. The only shot we had to do twice, we had to do 2 takes of 1 shot, which wasted about 14 seconds for me to do any other shots that I wanted to do, was because my co-director was talking with talent about him. Like, we needed him to like hold his arms up and scream, kind of like silhouetted by the sun, and he was like screaming up in the sky. And this was all MOS, by the way. So that's what I thought was going to happen. That was in the script, that was in the storyboards. And I was below, kind of like below this little like big cliff. So me and the director just thought, I just assumed that's what was going to happen. But he was actually talking to the talent about, you know what? That is kind of weird. Don't do that. It's too cheesy. Let's just keep your arms down and scream. And then so I didn't know that. So when we shot it, I was just waiting for his arms to go up. So I went to like 18 seconds of film waiting for his arms to go up, and they never went up. So I cut, and I was like, hey, why did his arms not go up? And he's like, oh, I told him not to last second. And I was like, oh man, I was like, that's gonna look really weird because it's silent. So you don't really get the idea that he's screaming because you can't see his mouth because it's silhouetted, it's black. So it's just weird. You just see him doing this, and it looks like he's getting like electrocuted. So we had to do the take again. So we did it again, and we used the one with his arms up. But that's just, communication is key. Like every single shot, you want to communicate with your director, to make sure you're always on the same page with everyone. You know, because it's huge. You know, you can waste some seconds that you might need.
Good point. Good points. Nicholson, did you?
For the anything to enhance or maximize my filming experience, the only thing that I can really say is I wish I had some nicer lenses, but you know.
Hey, you got those security cameras or lenses.
It was $25. I'll tell you what. It was.
I know, and actually, I wrote that down. I gotta track that. And thank you, Ebony, for that question. Are there any other questions?
Well, she also asked about being ambitious for
I'm
first time experience, and like I don't want to like, you know, dissuade somebody from being ambitious, like for a first time like shooting on film. Would it be your first time shooting on film, Ebony?
Yeah, it'll be my first time.
Okay.
Hey, Brian.
I think surrounding yourself with people who know what they're doing, I think will help facilitate the ambition of the project. You know,
Okay.
because and doing some research on your end too to know what is capable versus like what is like impossible or very difficult to pull off. So I think getting some people who understand shooting film or what you want to do, and researching other filmmakers who may be doing something in that similar style. Like Kevin mentioned before, we looked into the films of Don Hertzfeldt, but we also are fans of Stan Brakhage, so we were looking at those types of films and how we could achieve those kinds of things as well. So researching filmmakers that are doing the style that you want to do, and reading about like one thing that would be really cool is like doing stuff like optical printing, like which was done on like the Star Wars films, but like we don't have the equipment for that. I don't know anything about that, so that would be a very ambitious feat, and I would have to do a lot of research and speak to people and potentially even reach out to people who did work on those things, and figure out how they did it. So I think like ambition is a good thing. I just think preparedness will help you achieve that ambitious project.
Or thank you, and I'll be emailing you. Bye, y'all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ebony. Are there any other questions from our audience?
Yeah, sure. I can offer a question for you.
David?
Hey guys, good morning, by the way. So given that a lot of most pretty much everybody is kind of acclimated to the digital side of production, did you guys have any trouble translating that workflow through to the rest of the crew? So did your gaffers have any troubles converting to metering instead of not seeing an image? Any of the others? Obviously, First AC is a definitely a big change when you're converting to film from digital. So just any other members of the crew, did you guys have trouble making sure everybody was on the same page and working with it?
Thank you, David.
I could jump in. When you brought up the light meter, that's definitely something Kevin and I did not use too often in our past projects. So that was something that we had to get used to ourselves, was working with the light meter. And then as far as like not having a monitor, we just took our, time and looked into the lens and, did the best we could to see what was exposed. Because even though what you're seeing through the viewfinder isn't what's going to actually be exposed on film, it's a little darker, Kevin, or a little lighter?
Yeah, well, just to circle back just with the light metering, a lot of in the past with our films, we've brought on crew members to light them. So this was really kind of like a first time in a very long time, kind of just working with our hands and just doing the best we can. But like with the Bolex, I have an 815 Rex 4, so it's reflex. So and they have certain lenses that basically kind of account for when you put the lens on, because it's a reflex lens. You're basically seeing what the lens is seeing. But if you put on a lens, it kind of takes out, I think, a third of a stop of light. So back in the day, they made lenses that kind of balanced that. So I had one of those. But like when you stop down, you're stopping down your image. So a lot of the time we would basically we would meter, but we would open all the way up just to get our focus, make sure none of us touch the focus, me touch the focus while I'm like, wrapped around the camera. Once we had everything, the frame just right, we stopped down to the correct exposure and then just hoped for the best at that point. But film is very forgiving also, because one of the lenses is not a RX lens, and it worked out just fine. Even I found that even when we were just shooting stuff with the movie theaters, like even if I was like either a little over or a little underexposed, you could just quickly kind of balance that out and it looks fine. The end.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. Meters huge. Like I've been actually using my meter on digital sets now all the time just to like get that practice and just know like it's working correctly and I'm doing it correctly. So I've been doing it for years just because of that. But huge, huge. Metering's huge because I was outside all the time shooting. So we literally had to stack like ND filters. I think I was at like 1.2, like 1.8 NDs at times on top of the 85 filter. So man, you look through that ground glass and it's literally like black, but you know that your image is going to be exposed if you look at your meter correctly. So, and it was, luckily it was, but man, that was a little scary to look through the glass and see super dark through the ground glass, the VF, not the EVF. And, and yeah, and it came out great. But, and then of course the focus puller, huge. So, you know, these days, digital age, you're always seeing focus pullers on wireless, you know, whatever, Preston's looking at a monitor. But now, like, she wasn't doing that. She was legit measuring from the camera plane to, you know, the talent. And it was fun. She loved it. So it was great. And we had a few moves where we had to, like, you know, pull focus to certain things. And she did a great job. Callie Moore, if anyone knows her, amazing. So yeah, that's huge. We did have a special effects makeup artist on set too, which usually in that case, digital world, they would be on the monitor all the time looking at that. But she didn't have that opportunity. So we, because we had like some like augmentation in like the face of the talent, and so she didn't have that opportunity to look at the monitor. So we just kind of went with it and hoped that it was good in person. And yeah, those are 2-3 things that, you know, is kind of interesting to explain to the crew when it differs from digital to film.
Thank you, Brian. Same.
No comment.
Okay.
If I may, I do have one more question for you guys. So all these projects, I imagine, were, I heard something about shooting in December. So this is all pre-COVID, everything like that. Would you say, based off of your experience on the projects that you've shot, would it be possible even for productions to be shooting film safely, given that, you know, the first they see and everybody has to be next to the camera, pulling tape and getting close to talent and everything? Do you think that the workflow would be hurt significantly by the restrictions made by the virus, or do you think that it's still possible to be shooting film in this time?
If I may. So with a lot of the guidelines in terms of like spreading people out, I mean, it's always going to be, you know, we're always going to like find a way to like work around the guidelines that are given to us, whether it's, you know, being 6 feet apart or shooting on only 100 feet of film. You know, I feel like filmmakers in general will always be able to work around whatever problems there are. But I think one of the rules is constantly sanitizing everything, if I'm correct. Yeah, I feel like, you know, if there is a film loader when it comes to like 35 millimeter or like longer spools of 16, I don't, obviously you can't sanitize the film because that's well, because yeah, you don't do that. But I feel like, you know, that is something for people to think about is if you're shooting like this one roll film, there needs to be that one person that both loads and unloads. You can't have like people like taking shifts, or like if you don't finish like this roll today, some other guy will unload it the next day. I'm not sure. I know like sunlight kills COVID-19. I'm not too read up on like what kills it, but like, you know, a film is in the dark, so the sunlight isn't touching it. So I don't know if loading and unloading, if that's going to be one of the bigger problems there.
Yeah, just to jump in.
Mike, if I can jump in, how do the ECN developer chemicals react to COVID? Would that be something that, since the film has to be run through a developer? This is a partially sarcastic question. I'm not.
I mean, obviously the film is, yeah. It's just,
especially
But
if you bleach bleach it.
well, I'll let you guys answer the question, and I'll answer it from the, I guess, quote unquote Kodak's perspective. But go ahead, Kevin.
Oh no, I was just with that. I was I think I think it just depends on the size, and I mean I guess size, I guess budget of your production, because if you're budgeted to be shooting with a like a 435 or a 416, I don't know if they have radio transistors to have wireless follow focus for those kinds of rigs, or basically because they have video tap for those things. But if you're just a small crew running around with a Bolex, chances are you probably just 2 or 3 people itself. So at that point, it's like one person's just handling camera. So I think filmmakers are always going to find a way to make it, whether it's descriptions, like budget, environment, culture, because filmmakers are resilient. They're always going to find a way.
Yeah, if your project requires like a lot of crew and it seems like a bigger idea, and you're nervous about the guidelines, I would probably just wait until things are safer, or you change your idea. I was attending a conference yesterday, and a number of like short filmmakers were saying that they were turning their next project into something animated, just because they're trying to find a way to persevere and continue to make their projects. So, but if it's important, you'll either get 2 people to be your camera crew as opposed to 3 or 5, and you guys just like learn what it is you need to, in order to do that job. If you have to be the gaffer and the cinematographer, then having, a gaffer and a best boy and, this and that and all these grips, you might have to just sort of scale down your crew and tackle more. And that might be a good learning experience for you anyway, so you know how to do all those different facets. It depends on the size and the scope of the project. If it's something that's more manageable, like what we did was basically, shooting on tables and shooting miniatures and things like that, it can be done with like three people. But if it has like if it has like a dolly, then you might want to wait. just my thought on it.
Right. I don't know if Brian Hollers, did you have something to say?
Oh man, let's see. Yeah, it's interesting. It's such a new thing for all of us. We're all figuring this out right now. So, but another thing, I don't think it's a bad thing to have limitations. Crew members and producers are always dealing with limitations every day. We're limited by money, so we have to figure out a new way to shoot something. We're limited by the sunlight. We're limited by like the crew we want and the access to like cast. So you get creative as a creative individual to find a way around it to make it work. It's going to be interesting. We're all going to figure it out in the next few months. But of course, camera assistants like, operator, DP, camera assistant, second AC, always touching the same stuff. That's going to change. Don't know how, but it's going to change. I've heard recently operators these days, like union ops, they're going to definitely start doing more gimbal/remote head, gear head work, because that way you can put a camera in a room with talent, and then they can be outside, working with the wheels, working the joystick, whatever, however you want to operate a camera, and they don't have to be right next to talent on like intimate scenes or intimate shots. So yeah, we're going to find a way with the technology we have, but it's going to be weird to get into.
Right. And I think, because we've been looking at it too, because that's one of the things that I first started thinking of, David, as far as, okay, does this make film either less or more safe on the set? And I think the whole thing, you got to approach it, it's less the technology and more on the behavioral for changes that are going to happen on the set. And yes, you have the loader, but then you have the DIT, and you're still going to be moving hard drives back and forth. So, and with the film loader, I could be mistaken, but it's usually one film loader, I think, maybe there'd be a day player, but I know at the lab we've instigated or put in place any film that comes to our lab. We wipe it down before we open it and at the film cans, and we wear the mask. We put the so we're doing things on our end to make sure we are safe. But I think it's overall behavioral thing on the set. And as far as the focus, that's a good question. But I do know on the larger productions they have remote heads, and they do focus. They have video taps, and the video tap goes to the screen, so they kind of pull focus on that. But also, 16. I mean, when it was first started, it was by George Eastman. It was meant for consumers who didn't have the money for 35. So it was a documentary film camera, basically. So it didn't need a lot of people. And I know the unions aren't going to like this, but it was really meant for like documentary and few people operating, like a single person. But so it's pretty, if need be, you pretty much can do a lot with 16 that you don't necessarily need a whole crew. But focus is always important. Go ahead.
That's why the icon is the way it is. Also, just the shape ergonomically, the old cat on the shoulder is just to kind of it's like a one person band kind of running and gunning. That was it. I just wanted to say cat on the shoulder. Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah. But no, definitely you have to do precautions. And as productions resume, and not only around the world, but also in Georgia. Are there any other questions? David, I think, had another one.
Oh, I just wanted to add.
Are you in traffic, by the way? I was like, you're in the van, so I was like.
Oh, I am actually, believe it or not, I am sitting in a grip truck. I was hired just as a driver today, so I am sitting here safely away from set while they're doing their thing. I'm just so I'm on here passing time. So there were a couple of things that I saw from some Los Angeles rental houses that I thought were interesting. So as I've pulled focus and operated on film before, and it's typically best to be directly next to camera so you can gauge the distance just with your own depth perception and things like that. And obviously that presents a risk to both the first assistant and the operator during all of this. But with some of the rental houses out there have started including in their packages just automatically. They're basically 4x frames that you could attach that you could set up with any C-stand or anything like that. And they're just filled with basically a clear plexiglass plastic that just drops between you and one person. So it's just like kind of like you would see at some restaurants and things like that when they have plexiglass shields between, a customer, right, and things like that. So using those things, and then as well as on some of the indie sides, and if that's not available, you can use things like 4x gels, 4x floppies, anything like that. So just creating shields on set can be one resource to try and help people be safe, even if they have to be, possibly inches away from each other. If you can put up a shield, it can help things out a lot. So that's just my one little tip for anybody who's still out there trying
very good
to
advice, David.
shoot
Thank
on
you.
film. Yeah.
Thank you, David. I don't know if anyone wanted to address that comment, but a good comment, David. I know it's let me see, it's after 10. So I guess as we start to wrap this up, I just wanted to ask our panelists who joined us this morning, is there, since it's the second year, are there any things that you don't have to answer fully, but if there's any suggestions as far as how to improve on this contest, change the contest, by all means, let us know. If you have any comments right now, you can say, but I know some people say, can you possibly include a 400-foot contest? But sometimes personally, I like the 100-foot because it really challenges you. But if you have any ideas, or do let us know. You know, if you have any comments right now, or you want to think about that.
No, I thought you guys did a great job. I have no criticisms of the contest. It was our first time doing something like this, and it was a very positive one. You know, there were 3 opportunities to go to the workshops, and you guys were really generous and informative, and you know, working with the Atlanta Film Society. No, it was a really great experience, and I recommend, you know, people who have made 2 movies or 12 movies do it, because it's a fun sort of way to it's both fun and high stress because you're dealing with such little film, but it's also very liberating because, you know, you don't have all this time to perfect something. It's sort of a go, 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 and you have to fly on the seat of your pants a bit and yet be prepared. It's a paradoxical roller coaster that was very enjoyable and rewarding. So that's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else on that? Okay. Well, I just want to, again, Brian Hollers, thank you for joining us so early in the morning. Brian and Kevin, thank you for joining us early at 9. And Nicholson, thank you for jumping on board and saying, yes, I'd love to partake, and being here at 9 o'clock. Emma, thank you at the Atlanta Film Society for organizing this. Be on the lookout for an email from Melissa about the screening of the 100-foot contest. And thank you all for calling in as well, the other people who joined us. And we'll see you next month. Enjoy your weekend, all. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.